y'all, welcome back to our podcast. I'm your host, Cynthia Anebu, and you're listening to In Our Own Words, Black and Unfiltered, a podcast created by, directed by, and organized by 7 University of San Francisco students. We're here to uplift the voices, the Black voices, in the San Francisco and Fillmore area. Today we have a very special guest. I would love to introduce her, Dr. Saidah Leatutufu Burch. She was a former executive director of the Dream Keepers Initiative, a plan to reinforce and bring back money to the Black communities in San Francisco. Beyond that, she's a liberationist and much, much more. And I don't think I need to introduce her anymore. Bring it over to Dr. Saidah.
Hi, Cynthia.
It's nice to meet you.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm very excited to have you on our podcast today.
I'm glad to be here.
And we're very happy to have you. So, recently, actually, this is like our first formal conversation, but I got to meet you and I got to know about you from Monday. You did a spoken words poem, and I really, really love that because the poem was basically focused on introducing you and establishing who you are, telling the world what you've experienced, and just kind of putting your foot down and saying, this is who I am, this is what I've been through, and I really love that. And you also brought up that you identify as a liberationist. Yes. And for me, I haven't really heard that word that much up until recently in the Black community, and I just want to know for you and for my viewers to understand what that means to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, being a liberationist means that I am actively in the pursuit for freedom. As a part of any space that I speak in, that I present in, I'm very unapologetic about how I show up as a Black and Samoan woman, wife, sister, cultural orator, a disruptor of anti-Black racism and white supremacist ideology, and somebody who promotes Black liberation and indigenous sovereignty. And so as a liberationist, it means that I am actively disrupting systems rooted in oppression, systems that would have it so that Black folks can't be free, and that I'm in an endless fight for freedom because we deserve that. So that's what it means for me to be a liberationist.
I love that. I really do. I really love that. And I love the word that you said, disrupting, because I think when you hear the word liberationist, especially when it's associated with the Black community, a lot of people can say that's controversial, it's a heavy word. And I think it should be a heavy word. I think it should be disruptive. It should, because I think we've been put in a corner for too long.
Right.
And having that word of, I want to disrupt the system because the system is built against us is really beautiful. And also you pointed out doing it as a Black woman, as a wife, as a mother, and everything. I wanted to talk about that because from me to you being Black women, your experience as that, especially growing up, because you mentioned in your poem growing up in a low income area, and being a Black woman with that associated and then coming to the rises and everything like that. What was your experience like?
Yeah, it's interesting. So my experience, I'm from San Francisco. I'm a daughter of the city. I love this city. I'm a 4th generation San Franciscan, and I wouldn't take anything back from my upbringing here. So I spent some of my childhood in North Beach projects, and then when those were torn down, I mean, when you go to North Beach now, you see Fisherman's Wharf, you see a very tourist destination, and while that was there when I was a child, that wasn't my experience. And then from there, I relocated to Bayview, where I'm at now, where I've been, and where I own my home, and that is, to me, reclaiming roots. Reclaiming the roots that some of my family had to vacate because they were pushed out of the city, and reclaiming a legacy that I know, that I value and that I honor as a part of Bayview. And Bayview is one of the last Black neighborhoods in San Francisco. And so it was very important for me as a daughter of San Francisco to not leave. And we talked about this before the conversation, culture shock, and this idea of culture shock. And I went to the University of San Francisco for undergrad, and I hadn't experienced culture shock before until I got to USF as a Bayview resident. So being surrounded by Black folks, brown folks, Pacific Islanders, as I'm also Pacific Islander, being surrounded by those people in my community, and then going to USF, which I talk about in that poem, and experiencing people not understanding what it means to be, previously we called it at-risk youth, but really at-potential youth, and calling those young folks like basically poor Black kids. Like that was a culture shock to me. And I grew up with Black teachers, with learning about Malcolm X and all the black, like Angela Davis. A Black Panther was one of my educators when I grew up. And so going to USF, like this notion of culture shock, it was very important for me to let them know that as guests to this city, I'm welcoming them to my home. And so I expect them to respect my home and at the university, and I expect them to treat this city as they would if they were in their respective homes.
Wow, that's a lot. I really appreciate you mentioning the culture shock, because I think my culture shock was in reverse. I think I grew up in a very predominantly Asian and white community, so I didn't have the Black community in my background. I didn't have the uplifting culture. I didn't have those conversations. I learned about Martin Luther King Jr. once a year. You know, that was my experience. And so when I meet people like you who had that ingrained in growing up, and then they go out into the world and it's like that's not the reality, they don't really care about us, it's really interesting. Like your experience specifically in University of San Francisco, do you think they did their part to showcase the Black community the way and show up for us the way they should have?
I think I crafted my experience. So I remember going to USF and experiencing that culture shock. And my mom told me, look, just take every Black professor you can. And so what that meant was I took some professors 3 times or 4 times because there weren't many there. And I would say that the USF I know today has definitely come a long way. But when I was there, I graduated in 2011. I'm not ashamed of that. But class of 2011, it was a very different story. And it didn't always feel welcoming to me, even though I was here at home. This was my city. So I do think that the university itself has come a long way from what I'm seeing with base and the diversity I'm seeing across the campus. So I'll give them that.
I would say from my perspective, I like hearing from what you're saying, because I think they've established a lot in the past 10 years for Black community. And that's because we've been talking to them and telling them that we need this, we need these spaces, it's gonna help us, and it does help us because I am a part of those spaces. I'm a part of BASE, I'm a part of the programs that they've established for Black students coming into their school first year, and I've seen how it's reflected on me. I feel so confident to be a part of the Black community and talk about it.
I love that.
I love it too. I really do. I really appreciate it, and that's why I enjoy sitting next to you. I've been on this planet for 18 years, but I've already seen it. They don't want us there. They don't want us in a lot of spaces, and it's very hard to get there. So now that you're there, why was it so important for you to be a part of the Dream Keepers initiative? Was it something, especially because you're a Black woman, like why was it so important for you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I'll take us back 5 years to 2020. It was just about this time where Breonna Taylor was murdered. And earlier in 2020, Ahmaud Arbery was murdered at the hands of police. But in June 2020, something different happened where the world witnessed George Floyd be murdered. And there was a clarion call, if you will, for cities and corporations to respond. People across the globe really rose up to say Black Lives Matter. And so what are you corporations, what are you cities going to do about it? And so in San Francisco, the previous mayor, London Breed, she opted to do something about it. And that meant that she allocated $60 million a year to San Francisco's Black community. And so for me, being a part of the Dream Keeper initiative had everything to do with my identity as a liberationist, as somebody who's from San Francisco, as somebody who wholeheartedly believes that Black folks deserve to win in this city, that prosperity is our birthright. And so if I had an opportunity to be a part of it, I took it. And I would also share about the origin of Dream Keeper. When we think about where the name comes from, it came from Langston Hughes' book, Dream Keeper. A lot of people associate it with the poem Harlem, where he talks about what happens to a dream deferred. Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? But it really was about his poem Dream Keeper, where he talks about bring me all of your dreams, you dream keepers. And towards the end of that poem, he talks about wrapping the dreams up in this blue cloth, like a cloud-like cloth, so that they're not touched by the rough fingers of the world. And to me, that meant that I was able to enter a space where Black folks can exercise our radical imagination, where the city itself would invest in those imaginations and in those dreams with tangible dollars, and that we could implement those dreams and turn those dreams into reality. And so if somebody, you asking me why did I choose to step into that role, my response is why not?
Yeah. And I love that. Yeah. I think when I heard about that, not being a native of San Francisco, but then moving here and knowing that that was a thing, a lot of people were telling me that had never been done. That was something that's never been done for the Black community, for money to be specifically allocated for us to bring ourselves up and to support ourselves. And I really love that you stood behind that and you had a background before the Dream Keepers Initiative. And I think a lot of people don't talk about that, is you had a life before it. I want to talk about your life before the Dream Keepers Initiative and how it followed you and how it helped you to establish yourself in the Dream Keepers Initiative.
Yeah, I mean, I started my career young. Like, yes, I had a life. I didn't, but I always knew I'm a person of faith. And every opportunity that I've had was about serving people. So even after undergrad, my first job was a tutor, to tutor high school students, and to tutor students with IEPs or independent educational plans. And then it was in nonprofit work, in workforce development, coaching people on how to enter the careers of their choice. And then I joined the city to facilitate a public housing transformation program. So every role that I've had has been very personal to me. And that was intentional because I wanted to be a public servant. As somebody who worked in government, I wanted to be a public servant who paid attention to the people. And somebody who really valued and cared about people, because when I was growing up in public housing, in Bayview, in public school, as a survivor of DV, like, I did not receive the level of service that I thought the public servants should give me. Like, it was very much me learning how to navigate a system, watching my mom and my father navigate a system that wasn't built for them in the first place. And so it was always about the intentionality behind what can I do, how can I leverage my role and my proximity to power to move the needle. And as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to the Dream Keeper Initiative, as you said, folks have articulated they've never seen anything like it. Although we don't call it reparations, we revolutionize reparations and what it means to begin to repair harm done to a collective of people. And even though we unapologetically invested in Black folks, like, please believe non-Black folks benefited in this city. And so part of that is, and part of the narrative and the pushback that we got is that, oh, this is discriminatory, it's a violation of 209, when I can point to several data points where our Asian relatives, our Latinx, our brothers and sisters, our indigenous relatives have all benefited from these dollars that were allocated to the Black community. Yeah.
I really appreciate you bringing up the scrutiny that the Dream Keepers Initiative brought up. I would agree, I heard a lot of people being like discriminatory because you put specifically that it was for the Black community. I think a lot of people don't like to see that something specifically for the Black community, but it's also hard for them to wrap their heads around the fact that we need it. We need it because we've never been given anything. We are given breadcrumbs most of the time. So when we find the chance to allocate actual resources to ourselves, we should have the right to, because all of these other communities, equally deserving, get all of these resources too, and they benefit as we benefit. We all grow, we are as people, and I like that you mentioned a person of faith, because I am as well. I think we're all connected. So if the Black community is growing, I think everyone else around us will end up growing as well. But I wanted to go back to your experience growing up specifically. It sounds like you grew up around, like, I wouldn't say a harsh environment, but an environment that didn't support you. Do you think your route could have gone differently in any chance or any way? I mean, from your personal experiences growing up before you started your career, do you think, I just want to build on your experiences, like growing up, how that impacted you.
Sure. I would say, like, I don't need to sell the struggle, right? I think a lot of folks sensationalize the struggle. In my experience, the roadmap to how I got to where I am happened exactly how it was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
I've experienced family members in and out of prison. I was visiting those family members in and out of the justice system. I had my own interaction with the justice system. I've been shot at. Like I said, I've been in relationships that caused me harm. And I think one thing that remains true is my village is still strong. Like my family, the nucleus of my family is still strong in support of my parents, my sisters, the educators that I've had, or don't try too hard, just go the easy route. It was those educators who pushed me to say, watch this. And also my community, like anybody who visits my community say, oh, this the hood or whatnot. But it was my community who pushed me to say, what are you still doing here? Yeah. So when I would go home on weekends or do certain things, my community was like, you supposed to be in college, go back home, get out these streets, go do what you're supposed to do, which I appreciate. Yeah. And I value that. And I see many of those same people that I grew up with today, and it's nothing but love and appreciation. Yeah.
I like that you talked about that, because I think what I've noticed a lot about the Black community, being a part of it, because I'm from an African American family, like my family is African, immigrated from Africa. It's very beautiful that we as a collective are very keen on family and connection and staying connected no matter what, because we go through too much unnecessary. We go through too much unnecessarily. They try to separate us. They try to point out one person, try to do it individually, and it's like, it's beautiful that we stay connected. You talked about visiting family members who were behind, like in the justice system and stuff like that. You still stayed connected with them. It's really beautiful that also the village raised you. I think it's really important to have that village mindset and that process still be there. Do you think it's still here in San Francisco? Do you think that village mindset of it takes a village to raise a child, do you think that's still established in this modern time and day and age?
Absolutely. And I love that adage, it takes a village to raise a child. And over the years, I've also learned, and I've heard from colleagues, nobody wonders what happens when the village is hurting. And so what that means to me is I have a moral responsibility to be a part of the village that I now want to raise. Whether that's pouring into y'all as USF students, being a former graduate, pouring into the students or the folks that I mentor. I definitely think that being from San Francisco, I've seen that transition as a part of my journey. Like gentrification is real. The pushing out of Black and brown folks is real and present. And for those of us who are still here, I'll speak for myself, because I'm still here, I know that it's my responsibility to push back against the erasure, to make sure that our legacy is honored, to make sure that those of us who are still here, that we're able to preserve how we've poured into this city and then protect our future in this city. And also create space, which is what Dreamkeeper was about, create space where we can imagine a future in this city. Because we're owed that.
I like that. I really, really, really like that. And I like that you brought it back to the Dreamkeepers initiative. I think the change starts from within our community, and you being a Black woman in the community and being a part of that and bringing back to the village, supporting the village, supporting the youth like me, supporting the people in University of San Francisco. I think that support is shown. I think the scrutiny that the Dreamkeepers initiative received was probably from people outside of the community who didn't feel like they were being supported. And it's like, well, we've never been supported, ever. So it took us having to be in government positions to actually support ourselves. Why are you mad about that? Why can't we be allowed to do that? So I think it was really, really nice that you guys started that and kept that going. What were the challenges within it, being in the Dreamkeepers initiative, that you guys faced?
Well, what wasn't the challenges? You know what I'm saying? Like, what weren't the challenges? I mean, being Black in the work is automatically going to be a challenge. And I've always said that if this initiative is successful with like Black women leading it, it's going to be met with attacks.
Oh, most
Point blank,
definitely.
period. That was the first challenge. The second one that I acknowledged was that if San Francisco served its black residents like it was supposed to, we wouldn't need a Dreamkeeper initiative at all.
In the first place, yeah.
And the third thing was around it working. So Dreamkeeper initiative started to work. More black folks and brown folks were buying homes. More black folks were launching their businesses. Now, don't get me wrong, I said other non-black folks benefited, but since we're talking about black folks, they started launching their businesses. More black students started to enroll in college and universities and to graduate. So the challenge was that it started to work, which became a problem for like the outside spectators, the trolls, the bots. And so that was the biggest thing we came about in like then legal things, all these the trolls coming up with pretend lawsuits or whatever, and then the city starting to question, well, wait a minute, how come this is working for all these black people? Y'all were supposed to just kind of be in your corner and not do so well.
Why are you acting now? Why are
right.
you?
Right. Why are you excelling?
Yeah.
How come your excellence is so visible? How come your brilliance is being celebrated? And what we know for a fact over generations, black success is always met with violence, predominantly white violence. We see that in Seneca Village. We see that in the Tulsa Race Massacre. We saw that in Seneca Village was in Central Park, but in Atlanta, like every single place where black folks, because segregation was celebrated in the past, every single place that we built for ourselves, where we had our own, they came and burned it down.
Yeah.
And so it's no surprise that this active wanting to erase what happened over the last 3 years is being met with similar attacks.
Yeah, it's a common pattern. It is truly a common pattern. And you brought up a lot of things that I want to touch on. I think right now is a great time to take a break. We'll be back with you guys very soon. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody, from our break. So last time we were talking about the challenges of being a part of the Dreamkeepers initiative. Now I want to build on that because Dr. Saidah, you were talking a lot about not only the challenges that you guys were facing as a program, as an initiative, but also as a black community, the challenges that we constantly are facing. It seems that even if it's simply just for reparations, or we're simply asking for our right to vote, or we're simply asking for our right to speak up, a lot of the times we are fought back with why? What are you doing? We are just constantly being fought back against for simple needs, for simple resources, for simple rights. I want to understand, do you think that's something that's going to continue to go on, especially in the new administration? Do you think we are going to have to continue to be fought against? Or is it something that can be broken down? Do you think at some point people will start to accept all the changes that we're trying to make to help the black community be uplifted again?
I love that question. As a liberationist, I have to believe that will not continue. Like I have to wholeheartedly believe that. As a woman of faith, I have to manifest that freedom and liberation and the disruption that I spoke about and that I desire as a person and as a realist or as somebody who's living in the now, who's witnessing what's happening from here in the U.S. to Palestine and to Gaza. I have to, it's a difficult response and a difficult question because I know that it's not, when I say we all trying to get free, like black folks are just trying to get free. And until we're free, nobody is free. And like what's happening in this country, what's happening across the globe is nothing short of like disheartening, disappointment, fearful. And like I cry multiple times a week just by what's going on. And I also know that the work is necessary, that like the resistance is real, people power is real, organizing is effective when it happens. And so I believe in that. I believe in the people. I believe in people power. And so while we're in a moment now, like the next 4 years when we talk about the national landscape, we've been through it before. We haven't seen it, I think in my lifetime, I haven't seen it as extreme as it's been. And I also know my ancestors have been through worse.
Yeah.
Like I can walk freely up and down this street.
That's true.
And, you know, I can go shopping and do all the things, enter certain spaces. And so it really is a moment where I'm just living day by day and trying to play my role.
Yeah.
Because in organizing, everybody has a role.
Yeah. I think when you mention that our ancestors had it harder, and then you say simply, we're allowed to enter stores, we're allowed to have the right to vote, we're allowed to have freedom of speech. Those are regular human rights that we should be granted naturally as human beings on this planet. And I think a lot of people have a hard time, people who are not a part of the community, people looking from outside in, have a hard time understanding that we are not free. A lot of people like to go to talk about, well, okay, the Emancipation Proclamation. You guys are free, no more slavery, you don't have to do that. Or, okay, Jim Crow laws, they've been de-established, they're gone. Why are we still, quote unquote, complaining? Why are we still wanting, why are we still asking for more? What are we asking more for? But it's very clear from your experiences growing up, from your experiences being a part of the Dream Keepers Initiative, that's not the case.
Right.
And what do you think we can do as a Black community to showcase we are not free? Do you think we need to talk about it more? Do you think we need more people to start things like the Dream Keepers Initiative? Do we need to continue having outspoken people fighting back? Do we need to be very vocal? Do we need more liberationists like you who are ready to say, I'm going to disrupt it? Because there's also, we need to keep a balance of, we can't be too disruptive or we'll be silenced very quickly. Right. So what's your position on?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. And I will say your question reminded me, like, there is a reason why Black women are the most educated group in this country, but represent less than 1% of C-suite roles. Like, there is a reason for that. And so the attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion, the data tells us that it was actually non-Black folks who benefited most. When we look at the research on the curb cut effect, so the curb cuts in the sidewalk were intended to support folks in mobility chairs, but people with strollers, with shopping carts, with walkers, they all benefit. And so I think I'm going on a tangent, but it just, it lets me know that the active attack on and what we're experiencing today is like diversity, equity, and inclusion in reverse, right? It's like, if you don't want Black people to do well, just say that. Yeah. Like, make it plain. Because that's what is happening. Yeah. It would help. And we would stay, we would let us do our own thing. Yeah. Like, let us go back to the communities that we had. And back to our earlier conversation. We built our own communities with our own banks, our own businesses, own homes. But y'all didn't want us to have that. And then when we tried to participate in spaces that y'all segregated, that policies put in place to segregate us, that wasn't okay. Yeah. Hell, we go back 400 plus years. We didn't even ask to come to this country. Y'all just forced us here. And so it's almost as if like there's a lose-lose situation for us. But what I do know is I'm tired of talking. Mm-hmm. Like, maybe talking is necessary, a meeting is necessary, and organizing is necessary, and boycotting is necessary. So it's all of the above. Yeah. Right? And having people understand, like, this notion of freedom, it means something different to everybody. Like, to me, freedom means that my grandchildren, I don't have kids, but my grandchildren will be able to experience wealth, not only material wealth, but non-material wealth. We'll have equitable access to that health care. We'll be able to buy a home wherever they want to, or we'll be able to go through airport security without having a secondary search like my husband has to go through. Like, that that is a level of freedom where I don't have to worry or look behind my shoulder depending on what neighborhood I go to, where I can go to different parts of this city and not see a police presence. But so there's freedom means something different to everyone, and I just think that like the talking about it is a yes, and there are so many other things, but it may just be that we need to create our own again.
Yeah,
They burn it down.
A lot of people say we need to burn down the system and build it back up again, which I'm going to be honest, sometimes I agree with, because the system is so deeply rooted in racism. It's so deeply rooted in racism. It started from racism. The American system started based on racism. If it's not against the black community, it's against the indigenous community. It goes way back to racism. So yeah, every time a black person in the community says something, that's us being gentle and talking and being like, hey, we don't like this struggle no more. That's what we've been doing for years. And I think a lot of people are getting frustrated because we do that gentle conversation, we try to be soft about it, and we are just met with closed ears. They turn their ears from us. They turn their head.
When we look at trends, specifically trends of revolution from the 60s, the civil rights movement, from college uprisings during the Vietnam War, even to George Floyd, and now most recently to the Free Palestine movement, change happened with organizing and that disruption. We have to make power constructs uncomfortable. And when we disrupt systems of power and systems of oppression, they begin to respond. And so that creates moment in time response, because as we're seeing, there's retraction from the Black Lives Matter movement that happened in 2020. We're seeing that in policy. I think too that we got to change out these policymakers. So there is power in the vote. I have no idea why this country, if my grandfather cannot go out and get a job right now at his age of 78, why are people older than him running this country?
Right.
And setting policies in place that dictate my livelihood and the livelihood of the children that I don't have yet.
Why are they talking about our
that
lives?
That don't make sense to me.
And we're not in the room.
Correct. And none of them look like me
at all.
We got two women that look like us in the Senate.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like that's a problem. And
it's frustrating because this was a personal conversation I had with myself, but it's very frustrating because a lot of people in the government positions want to talk about, DEI, should we keep it, should we take it out, all of these like new movements in the black community, or if it's not for the black community, just people of color in general. A lot of those people who are having those conversations have nothing to do with those communities. We are not in the room when they're having those conversations, but they still decide what happens to us next. But when women like Kamala Harris, for example, the former vice president who had the opportunity to be the first black woman and Southeast Asian woman to be vice president, tried to then put herself in a position of power, again, America chose that they didn't want her to be in the decision-making room. And I think that tends to happen a lot to black women specifically. Women in general, obviously, because we face a lot of scrutiny just being women in general. But black women especially get the scrutiny not only from the outside world, but from within our community.
Well, one, I don't think Kamala spoke for all black women. And like, I don't necessarily agree with all of her stances on issues. And she's from San Francisco. I didn't agree with her practices in the city. But that said, what I witnessed since July through the election was black women coming together and showing how powerful we actually are. And then that power became a threat. Like when black women were able to raise more than $1 million in 24 hours, like that became a threat to specifically white men, because they didn't think that we could, and they didn't think that Kamala could. And so it definitely created this level of exhaustion from us. You hear a lot about the 92%. Like we did our job, the 92% of Black women who voted in a particular direction. But I also think that the country was just fed up, was fed up with what was going on and what the past administration was doing. But I also value the work of the Black women and everything that they poured, including myself, poured into that election. And I'm also a member of the Divine Nine. And so the way that we showed up to get people out to vote, to register to vote, and to put our money where our mouths are, right? And so when we put in all that work as volunteers too, like it creates a level of exhaustion, right? So we tired.
Yeah, very tired because no, I can't do this no more. I really appreciate how you talked about that, and I think also I like how you brought up the point that you don't agree with some of her points. I don't think anyone should always agree with the politicians or stand right behind them all the time because they don't speak for all of us. They can't. They're just one person and we are millions of different people. I think she, though, was a great vessel to say that Black women can do it.
Yes.
Because a lot of people don't think we can, and it's really sad. But I think, I don't want to end on a bad note of, oh, Black women are always pushed back. I want to talk about, what do you think going forward you see as a bright light or a light at the end of the tunnel for not only Black women, but the Black community as a whole for San Francisco? I know that you're no longer a part of the Dream Keepers Initiative, but beyond just the Dream Keepers Initiative, there are so many other things going on in the state, this area of San Francisco that are supporting the Black community. How do you think it's going to grow in the future?
Yeah, so I find solace in knowing that I am here because my ancestors persisted. My enslaved ancestors persisted. If they did not, I would not be here right now. I also know that Black folks, there's something so beautiful about Black culture, with our ability to celebrate and exercise joy amidst chaos.
Yeah.
Like that, that is a skill in an art form that I'm not sure any other community experiences because I'm not a part of any other community outside from Pacific Islanders, and we are very close to Black folks. In fact, when my Pacific Islander family came over, it was Black folks who welcomed us.
Yeah.
And you have some Pacific Islanders who identify as Black because of their skin complexion. But the level of joy that we have, the leaning on the village for that joy, pouring into ourselves. Like I told you, the 92% is taking a break, and we're taking a break because we're practicing self-care so we can prepare ourselves for the next fight and the next revolution. Like that is a co-conspirator and ally that loves, respects, and protects Black women. Yeah. Because this country, whether we want to believe it or not, was built on the backs of Black women. And that is the fact when we think about our enslaved ancestors who provided nourishment to the enslavers. It was Black women cooking. And no dig to Black men. I love Black kings, of course.
And we have to support them.
And like our Black women continue to nourish this country, even though we get disrespected. And so I would say to practice that self-care, find joy where we can in the music, in the dance. Yeah. Some people may take it as, how can you dance in moments like this? It's because we need to hold on to what joy we have.
Yeah. Right? The joy is what got us to this point.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's the joy that brought us to this point. And if we go back to our ancestors in the slave time, they chose music to keep themselves uplifted. They chose to sing praise songs about how there is good times coming. There's something after this. There's a reason behind it. And I like that you pointed out Black women investing in themselves, because we invest too much. I think we invest a lot into this world. We invest a lot into this America. We invest a lot into the San Francisco area. And it's time we invested into ourselves, because if you take care of yourself, you can take care of the people around you.
Exactly.
And I really appreciate having you on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
It was wonderful to talk to you about all of your experiences, your growing up, your career, the experience you had in the Dream Keepers Initiative, and I loved hearing about your perspective.
Thank you.
So
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for viewing our podcast episode again. If you're a listener or watcher, we appreciate you, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.